I thought this was a great chance to kind of catch up. So who wants to go first? Would you like to tell people about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so we have a bit of a weird background. I'm actually a comedy stage hypnotist originally. So I've spent the last 18 years traveling around the world, hypnotizing people to do a comedy show and making them do crazy things. It's how we became friends, actually. Kennedy's an onstage mind reader. Anyone listening from the US would know that as a mentalist. And basically uses psychology, understanding people, reading people, body language, etc., to make it look like he can read their minds. And we've both been doing that for a long time. We met at a conference for magicians of all things, and became pals. Became pals through that. That's like our background, and that's kind of one of the things we do.
No, fascinating. And I must admit, it's one of my later questions, but actually now we've kind of touched on it. How did you both get into that? Like, so how did you become a mind reader? Because I've read Darren Brown's books and that kind of thing, but likewise, well, actually, we'll touch on that one first, if that's cool. How did you get into what you do?
It's a weird one. I really don't know. I remember I was always interested in, I think I was a paranoid kid and I was always interested in manipulating my parents. So I remember there was this Christmas. It was Boxing Day, so it was the day after Christmas, and my mum said to me, "Kennedy, will you move all your toys from underneath the Christmas tree and put them in your bedroom?" And of course, stubborn little Kennedy was like, "I'm not doing that. I'm going to try and manipulate my mother at this point." So I thought, I'll know what I'll do. I said these words. I said, I could, but can I just put them on the table like you did last year? And my mum, of course, said yes. Now, if you actually, years later, when I'm sort of analysing how I ended up doing this mind reading and influencing people, you realise that's probably the first time that I was actually manipulating somebody else's mind and how they think, because there's no way my mum could have disagreed with that. She couldn't have said, "No, don't do what I did last year," because us humans can't disagree with ourselves. We have this rule called commitment and consistency, which means when we make a decision, even if later we find out it was a bad decision, we will still find a way of post-justifying it.
It's one of Cialdini's 6 universal principles of social influence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's Cialdini's, yeah.
Yeah, I must admit, I never know how to, because I'm from Liverpool, I never know how to say posh names, but I'll... I'll go. So one of my kind of questions was actually how, both in my head, it was more to do with stage presence kind of thing, but almost have you felt that your stage careers have helped you in business? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I mean, I know for a fact I was like a really shy, terrified, quiet kid. Talking to people terrified me. I was the kid who would hide behind my mum's leg if there was a stranger at the door. Like I was really, really scared of interaction. And even at school, found that really, really difficult. And I think so as an entertainer, you're thrust into the spotlight. You have to learn to think on your feet very quickly, especially in our line of work. You have to, everything that happens every night on stage is totally different. So you have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be able to react fast. I think all of those things are real skills that you have to be able to pull into business as well.
Because so I've seen you both present, and again, it's a funny one because you actually saw me the month before, and it's that balance of where if you're on stage in front of, I guess, 100 people, the audience can smell fear, and they can, it's just any quiver in the voice and they'll kill you. And but it was really interesting to kind of watch you guys. In some ways it was an act because you were so well rehearsed, if that makes sense. But I could just imagine see how those kind of skill sets, which take years to practice, actually would, play off and almost, really benefit someone in business that has to either sell a product in person or on a stage.
Totally. Definitely. I mean, I think one of the things you have to do is if you're going to be a more confident presenter, whether you're doing a pitch presentation or if you're presenting in front of potential customers or if this is to the board or you're trying to get investment, whatever the heck the reason that you've got to present to a bunch of people, if you're sharing your knowledge in your sector, one of the things you have to really do is you have to have incredible levels of trust. I absolutely have to trust that whenever I stop speaking and making my point, Rob's going to pick up. And that's going to happen. And he has to absolutely trust that as soon as he finishes talking, I'm going to continue the story. And one of the big things we have to do, it's funny, people often talk about, we look very rehearsed. We don't script our presentations, but what we do is we have this sort of rule. I have a bunch of rules. One of them is, if there's 2 of you, it's much more challenging to put a presentation together because you've got to like share that voice. But the other thing you have to do is make sure you don't end up doing what a lot of dual presentations do, or team presentations, even worse, is they end up going around in circles because they're repeating each other. So they're sort of going, yes, and yes, and this is not going anywhere. What you actually have to do is allow yourself to say, that person was in charge of that point. They made that point. And even if I think I want to clarify it because there was something different, you can't. You have to move on. So you have to be progressing the narrative. You have to be progressing the message at all times. And I think a lot of presentations really suffer from, this is actually not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I actually think that's a really good point, because oh God, in the past I've been asked to judge like MBA student presentations where you've got a group of 6 and they all feel they have to say something. And it's like, now John, it's your turn. And Kimberly, and it's just, oh, you just want to die. And it's just like, look, just pick one person and just nail it. But it's interesting. But, that happens through all kind of different types of careers. And then one of the things which kind of came to mind, because I actually looked into it and I couldn't find any, was although I'm not funny, I can see the benefit on almost training and practicing to do stand-up comedy as a way to just practice stage presence for business stuff. And I actually Googled it. I looked to see if the Stand Comedy Club in Newcastle do anything. Someone put me in touch with Alfie Jerry that we all know. And I think someone used to do it back in the day. But I think there's a real genuine niche for the ability to teach. I know there's people that do business presentations, they coach you how to present. But I'm almost taking the craft of entertaining is what you two do, and then applying it back. So I was always kind of fascinated, almost when I knew I was going to get you on to kind of ask you the question.